Hello. The Divine Code reading for November 19th, pages 329 and 330. We're currently in the chapter Maimed or Broken Limbs. Topic number 12. The difference of opinion applies only when a neck slaughter is not kosher. That is, if it was performed on a non-kosher species of mammal or bird, or if it was performed on a kosher species by a Gentile. So the difference of opinion as to whether a organs that are within the either the respiratory or the feeding system, the digestive system of the animal, severed limbs of a living limb of a living animal, if it's severed through a neck cut. Or if it was performed by a Jew as a kosher ritual slaughter for the sake of consumption by a Jew. All rabbinical authorities agree that the lungs and digestive tracts and organs are allowed to be eaten by the Gentile according to Torah law. Trete Kulin 33b and Rashba as taught by Shach Yoredea, chapter 27. So there's no question that if it's a Jewish slaughter, a proper kosher for the sake of Jewish consumption slaughter, then anything taken off of it is acceptable from the point of the neck cut. The animal's considered dead, even if it's still technically alive at that point. A Gentile doing the slaughter, or if it's done for the sake of a Gentile consumption, or if it's a if it doesn't fit the criteria of a kosher slaughter, in all the criteria, then there's a question as to whether or not those organs, the digestive and respiratory system, is severed at that point. Likewise, if a Gentile slaughtered an animal with a neck cut but did not cut the windpipe and esophagus completely, the lungs and digestive tract organs are still permitted, since they are not completely separated from the animal, but are rather hanging in it. And they are permitted like a hanging limb, as explained in topic 4.1 above. So assuming that the esophagus and windpipe are not cut all the way through, it's not separated at that point, and the hanging limb is permitted to a Gentile by opinions. And the Divine Code gives us a nice picture here at this point, showing the respiratory and digestive tracts of a cow and a bird, a chicken. So we can see what it is we're talking about in this. We'll also see Panim Yosefot Parshiot Zav and Katim Sofer Yoredea, chapter 18, teach that they are considered as hanging limbs. So the only real issue is if the esophagus and windpipe were completely severed, what's the status of the organs inside of the slaughtered animal, if they're completely severed through the esophagus or the windpipe at the point of slaughter, prior to the animal, that little time period. But according to all practical halakha, the parts are acceptable, even though it's in kind of a gray area, but they're not going to be consumed until after the animal's dead. And since it's a gray area, typically it's allowed in that case. Chapter 5, pertaining to a fetus and to eggs. Topic number 1. The prohibition of Abram and Mackay from animals begins at the moment of birth. For the verse, Genesis 9:4 states, "But flesh, in its blood, its life, do not eat," which indicates that life is in the blood. But for a fetus, prior to birth, the life is not entirely in the blood. It is instead dependent on both its and its mother's blood. This can be learned from the case of one who cuts off limbs from a fetus and leaves them inside of the mother, as will be explained in topic 10 below. That'll be that's in this chapter in a couple of days, in 2 days. Therefore, one who slices up a fetus while it is still in its mother's womb, who eats those pieces regardless of the pieces that were removed before or after the mother's demise, regardless of whether the piece is removed before or after the mother's demise, will not be liable for a capital sin. However, there are which the limbs and meat of a fetus are forbidden because they will appear to an onlooker as a transgression of Abram and Mackay is being committed. There is a midrash concerning Joseph and his brothers. His brothers were trying to study out this law. And so they cut up a fetus while it was in the mother's womb, and they started eating it because they were saying that this halakha would allow it. Joseph saw it and assumed that it was limb from a living animal. And so when he told his father about this, and it created all the difficulties. So it's best, we learn from that, it's best not to do this. It's best not to do things that look like it's committing a sin, even if it's not, because it looks like it and people might get the wrong idea. We learn that from the story. And that's what's being said here, is it's best not to do it because for an onlooker, even if it's allowed. Topic number 2. A fetus which is born alive before its mother committed the period of gestation. Although it cannot remain alive without external support and is therefore considered a non-viable birth, it is forbidden for a Gentile to eat from it while it is still alive. However, one is not liable for a capital sin if one ate the flesh from it that was severed from it. Only after it dies naturally or is killed is it permitted to be eaten. Rambam, The Laws of Forbidden Foods 4:4, explains that although this animal is born, since it cannot live, it is considered an unslaughtered carcass. It appears that anything that has a life must be killed before it is eaten. If doctors save the fetus and raise it in an incubator and it lives, it is clearly regarded as a completely live animal. So this animal, a lot of this stuff about fetuses and that, a lot of this is in gray area, and it can go this way or that way, but here we have a prematurely born animal. If it was left alone, it would die. It's not, but if it could be placed in an incubator, it would live. So it is forbidden to be eaten while it's still alive, because it still has the life in it. And it's similar to a slaughtered animal that is still alive. You're not allowed to eat from the slaughtered animal while it's still alive. That's a similar case because it's in the process of dying. It could be saved. I mean, it's possible to take an animal after it's gone through slaughter before it dies to save its life. You get a veterinarian in there and spend $1 million, you could save its life. So if a person were to eat from it when it's in that state, when it's in the process of dying, they're not going to be liable in a court of law for it, but it's still forbidden. It's forbidden to eat from it at that state. And the fetus that is in the process of dying, it's forbidden to eat from it. But if the person does eat from it, it's not a liability in a court of law. It's just wrong to do. If the fetus was dead upon birth, it is deemed a carcass that is permitted. If the fetus is dead, it's dead. I mean, it's no longer a gray area, so it would be permitted at that point. It's only if the baby cow or whatever is born partially alive. You know, it's still technically alive, even though it's not expected to live. Topic number 3. The majority of mammals are born after the mother has completed the full period of gestation. Accordingly, one recently born animal is liable for a capital sin. Since we do not rely upon a doubt for this particular animal was born from an incomplete gestation. So when it says complete gestation, it doesn't mean you mark off the days on the calendar. It means that the animal is viable. The animal is expected to live. Well, if the animal is expected to live, then a limb separated from an animal that's expected to live would clearly be a Torah violation, would be liable in a court of law. It's only in the case where the animal is not expected to live. It's like a slaughtered animal. It's not expected to live. Then it would not be a court case at that point. The reason for this is because, as a rule, we follow the majority of cases, and the majority of mammals are born alive after a full period of gestation. All marsupials give birth while offspring is still in the early fetus stage, and the mother's pouch serves as an external womb. Like, I guess he's referring to kangaroos. Since this is the normal manner in which these animals are born, one is liable for a capital sin if he eats flesh from a newborn marsupial after the normal gestation period, even though the animal is similar to an incompletely developed fetus. So this is a technical. Okay, the regular mammal is born ready to. You see a horse gets born, and it just stands up and it starts jumping around. It's what animals do. Normal mammals do is they are born and they're able to exist. They're able to live. They're expected to live. In the case of the marsupial, that's just like a kangaroo or similar animal. They have this tiny little thing that comes out of the mother's womb and it goes into the pouch. That animal is expected to live. In the majority of cases, that animal is expected to live, and because that is the case, and because it's in a state where it would be considered a limb of a living animal to take a piece off of it and start chewing on it while it's still alive. So that's a very specific case, but it's being used to illustrate the point that if it's considered viable, considered livable, that it's expected to live, and it's been born, it's expected to live, then that's the case where it's clearly, it's not in the gray area. It's clearly in it would be a court liability to eat a limb from that living animal. See, Sadia, Piat, Hasdea, Ma'ar, Yiket, Gimel, chapter 6, which cites that most rabbinic authorities agree that in Torah law for Gentiles, as for Jews, we follow the rule that one should consider a normal situation which occurs in the majority of instances and follow the decision which applies in that case. Nevertheless, if a particular scenario that there is a reason to doubt that the animal was born after a completed pregnancy, for example, if it was apparent that the mother did not carry the fetus to the full term, one who eats from it during the first 7 days of its life is not liable for a capital sin because the status of the animal is in doubt. Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, chapter 15. So, if there's an area of doubt, that takes it outside of the purview of the earthly court, a liability in an earthly court. It would not be a court case at that point if there's a reason to doubt in that sense. In the first 7 days, after it's been alive for 7 days, the fetus survives the first week, it's likely to continue living. So at the point of 7 days, and by today's medicine, it might be less than 7 days. By the point of 7 days, if it survives 7 days, after that point, it would clearly be a court case for a person to eat a limb of the living animal. If, however, the animal lived an entire week and is healthy, it is deemed a regular animal, and one who eats Aver Mimachai from this animal before it dies is liable for a capital sin.